feel like, hello. I feel like after that introduction, I need to like dance out, do something special. I need to like be Jennifer Lopez or something. Anyway, good morning, everybody. So this morning, I want to talk about something that's a sensitive issue. And I know for some of us, that is the very last thing we have emotional energy for. We've just seen major trauma come to a head in our city, and we're tired. We're tired, we are emotionally drained. And I get that, I respect that, I understand. And I still feel convicted that this is a moment that we need to come together to discuss these issues. It's time to say some things aloud. So I am committed to being very gentle when I say those things, to really taking my time and being thoughtful about how to say it, to take everyone's feelings into consideration. And I'm asking that if each of you would just help me to make this safe space to talk about things, to just open your ears and open your minds and open your hearts to be receptive to this, that we can really walk away from here changed. So I was sitting on the front porch with my son. We were doing homework. And I just happened to look up from his homework, and I see a young man walking across the street. And I mean, he looked like fly to me. I mean, he like looked fresh, like he has like a professional stylist at home picking his clothes. I mean, like he just popped off of a magazine page. And I was thinking that, like he had his hat was this way and was like this way and his clothes were this way. I mean, he just looked cool, was what I was thinking. And when I was in the middle of that thought, my son says, people like him are mean. And I said, they're mean? What do you mean? And he said, they're just mean, they do mean things, they say mean things. So I said, well, son, what happened? He goes, they just say mean things. I said, son, tell me what happened. Did something happen? He's like, no, well, like in movies, they're mean, they say mean things. My red flag, my parenthood red flag went up. Because my 6-year-old African-American son had just racially profiled an African-American boy. Now, as a mom, as the mother of an African-American boy, I'm often thinking about his safety. I think as moms, keeping our kids safe, that's what we do. That is the chief among our duties. Now, I've thought about how to keep him safe from things that are going on out there in the world, how to teach him how to navigate this world, which may also often be hostile to him, may not treat him with dignity just because of the body he was born into. But this was in his mind. I have to keep him safe from something in his little 6-year-old mind that he couldn't even point to its origin. He didn't say, oh yeah, because mommy, he did this, or mommy, somebody like that did this. He was like, I don't know, it was like in a movie or something. He couldn't even pinpoint where that venomous, dangerous, poisonous thought had come from. It was just in his subconscious. And I just am like, it's just painful. It's something that it's painful. And I think, well, how do I keep my child safe? What do I do? How do I keep my child safe? How did my mother keep me safe? And then I thought, oh, my mom really did, she really was intentional about addressing the thoughts in my head. When I was a little kid, my mom and some girlfriends of hers, not even people that she'd known already necessarily, but people she came into relationship with around this issue, developed a group called Families of African Descent. And in this group, we would get together, I think it was like a Saturday each month, and we would do things that would inspire positive thoughts in our head about what it meant to be black. And I mean, we did all kinds of stuff. We went to visit the sarcophagus of Tutankhamun and talked about African kings and queens, and we practiced Kwanzaa and learned about what that was, Kujichagulia and Umoja, and learned about those principles that would be healthy for our communities. We had storytellers, jellies, griots, come in and tell stories to us, and they told these fantastic, amazing stories that created these brilliant pictures in our minds of black people doing incredible things. Sometimes they were in Baltimore, and it was like just a rich, vibrant story of, brown houses and townhouses and A-rappers going down the street singing about their wares. Hey, come get your red, ripe watermelon. I could just see it in my mind, and it was amazing. Or sometimes it was in Africa, and she was telling a story about Moisi Oetunya, the smoke that thunders, this giant waterfall, and it was all this imagination that put these positive thoughts in my head. But another thing that my mom and other moms in that group did was they sent their children to white space. What is white space? This is a map of Baltimore. The green dots down the middle, each green dot represents a white house, represents 50 white households. The green represent white households, and the blue represent black households. I like to call this the demographics of avoidance. One thing my mother could not avoid, however, was that often, in order to ensure my safety, she needed to send me into white space to get access to resources that maybe weren't available in black space. So she sent me to this really expensive private school. I think in the 80s, I think it was $14,000. I think it's like 27 or 30 or something like that now. She sent me to this really expensive private school because she knew that the gatekeepers to scholarships were there. She knew that the gatekeepers to jobs were there. She knew that in order to have access to capital, I needed to be in networks with people there. So she sent me there for my safety, to learn the language of that group, to learn the culture, so that I could enter into conversation, dialogue, relationship with people there for my safety. But also for my safety, my mother and another mother in that group sent us into black space in the summers. So I went from this really expensive private school where, there's a salad bar and you can pick what you're gonna have for lunch, to a summer camp that was $20 for the summer, and you got your lunch in a box, and the sandwich came in a little, piece of cellophane or whatever, and it was a piece of turkey or ham or bologna or whatever, and that's what you ate. Because for my safety, I needed to know how to engage in that community as well. I needed to know the sounds and the rhythms and the mores and the values, the customs of that group, so I could have a center, so I could have home, so I could be part of that in-group. She did that for my safety. Because my mom knew that you cannot have successful relationships with people you don't know. Arne Duncan, Secretary of Education, tweeted this week that in the 21st century, a quality education is an international education. But we don't leave our dots. If we don't know the people in the next section of dots, how are we prepared for an international world? So when I moved into my neighborhood, I was really excited because I felt like it was challenging the dots. My neighborhood was kind of like eclectic, like I think of it like as the Brooklyn of Baltimore. Not Brooklyn, Baltimore, but Brooklyn, New York, like the Brooklyn of Baltimore. Like people sometimes don't want to drive to my house, they think it's like too far away. Like you live where? Oh, I'm not driving to Hamilton. Like people in Manhattan treat Brooklyn. Like they're just not going there. Like, oh, this sounds cool, what is this party? Oh, it's in Dumbo, They're just not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. So I feel like people I try to like sneak it in. I'm like, I'm right by Morgan, I'm right by, no. They're like, where? So, but it's got like this main street, it's like this funky main street, and like there's like a cupcake shop and a coffee shop and a dance studio, and it's got this and that. I'm like super duper excited about it. I go to the local public school and I'm seeing faces of different colors in the same room. And this is like, in Baltimore, and there was like an Asian kid, and I was like, this is Baltimore. I'm sorry, it's the up south. We're below the Mason-Dixon line. We have a dichotomous understanding of race. It is black and it's white, and like other people who are in there, if you're not black, you white too. That's just like a thing. Like, we're trying to work through that. I've grown up, I've gone to graduate school, I understand how to talk about other groups, and no, but I'm Baltimorean at heart, so I sometimes struggle with that issue. Be patient with me. So I'm like psyched about this. We buy this house, and literally we've not even been there a year yet. In August it'll be a year. And like I said, I saw a few faces in there, so I'm like, okay, this is a start. But then, you know, we went to this kind of outdoor festival. My husband and I show up with our 2 little brown kids, and we're excited, and we walk into the festival, and literally it falls out of my mouth before I have a chance to like choke it back. I was like, who's all these white kids? Nobody heard me, except for my husband, thank God. But running around at this park in my neighborhood were like 75 white children doing the hula hoop. Where do they go to school? Because they don't go to the local public school. After I got myself together, I went over and made nice with the mom, you know, and, you know, after we commiserated a bit, you know, I kind of leaned in and I said, you know, where do these kids go to school? And she told me about the local private school where they all went to school. But this mom was cool, you know, we seemed to have a lot in common. You know, we even had a little talk, because my light talk is social justice talk. I never like talk about, you know, cartoons. I'm always like, and have you thought about race? You know, it's hard for me to keep it light. So homegirl was right there with me. So I was like, well, if she sends her kids to school here, I need to check it out. So I go and check it out, and it's a predominantly white school. And it's this cloistering thing. That's what I call it, it's cloistering. When I was at that private school, so here we are in Baltimore, which is a black city, but when I went to this private school, it was a cloistered education for white students. And then again, my uncle recommended to my mother that he take me out of that private school when I went to high school, because he said I was going to develop an identity complex. I mean, okay. So, but yeah, I mean, he's a wise man, so okay. But he sent me to this school. They sent me to a school that was 89% black, but in my gifted and talented classes, I was the ethnic minority. In my gifted and talented calculus class, I was the only black person in there. The school's 89% black. Cloistering, labeling, gifted and talented, standard. Cloistering, again, here I am in this park with this cloistering. So I really have been over this year thinking about this. I've been asking a couple questions, and the graph that I put up is going to demonstrate the trouble I'm having with the answers to the questions. So the first thing people tell me is, well, city schools really aren't good, as if the chief thing they're looking for is a good school. But if you look at this graph, white parents were more likely to send their children to a school with more white kids, not with a higher rating. So at the bottom, you see the ratings of the schools, and you see that the school with the rating 6 has less. These are 4 schools I considered sending my son to, and I'm being non-specific about names on purpose, because this isn't about dragging somebody out to town square and flogging them. This is about thinking about an issue. So this school with a high rating of 6, I guess it just had too many black kids in it. You know, because the schools with the lower ratings, I mean, even the school with the rating of 7. So then the next thing people said was, well, I don't want my kid to be the only one. When I went to that private school, I was the only one. And it was supposed to be like a mark of dignity. Oh, you're here. That means something good about you. Why, in the converse, is it something negative? And then the last thing people said was, well, I'm tired of feeling like prey, and I don't want my children to feel like prey. Which is really what my son said, isn't it? He looked right at that boy and decided he was a predator. He didn't know him. The last school on here with the rating of 7 is right in the middle of a white neighborhood. I don't even want to say predominantly white. It's a white neighborhood. I go there all the time. The black person I see is me. If a school is really the outpouring of its community, don't the neighbors in that neighborhood have the power to make that school whatever they'd like it to be? But instead, what we're putting forth is an idea that some people are predators, and so you don't want to go. This is something I was really excited about. I saw it on the window of an art school that's in the black part of town. I bring that up because I think it's important for us to really think about our demographics of avoidance. And the one thing I just want to highlight from here, it's adopted from Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Under basic needs, I don't know if you can see it, it's small for my eyes, I'm like squinting at the screen, is unconditional love and support and identity acceptance. Already there's a crack in our foundation. Before we take any steps forward, there's a crack in our foundation. My son illustrated it. He looked right at a picture of himself in Fast Forward and thought predator. The parents in that community, I just said, oh, we don't want our kids to be prey, or I don't want to be the only one. We don't have unconditional love and support. We're all Baltimoreans, and we're looking at each other as predators. And I think maybe we often are thinking about it as, oh, I'm the group that's been looked at that way, so it's my unconditional love and support, it's my problem. But if we are all one community, we're all broken by not getting this thing together. This underlines and outlines other things that we could do as a community to really deal with some of the trauma. We need to build some relationships. Our safety is based on restoration. If we can't restore the relationships between one another, that's going to affect everyone in the city. Like in Camus' The Plague, you can't just put up a fence and think that you're not going to be affected. And then if we are really going to get to these relationship needs, this self-care, we need to be in conference with one another. We need to talk across these lines, across those blue and green dots. Finally, I just wanted to bring this to light. My pastor used this in a sermon a few weeks back. You know, I often feel like, oh, if I was, you know, if this was the 60s, I was just like a part of a movement. If Dr. King was here, you know, I would get involved, but, you know, sometimes I just can't do it on my own. People don't want to be that only one, but you know what? It happens one person at a time. If one person will just reach out to one person, go to your local community center where you never go because it's not in the blue dots. Go. Invite that other mother that you met on the playground to a play date that's maybe not in your same kind of circle of influence, to borrow from Naja. Do it. Have a reason to go into the other colored dots. Do you have a favorite restaurant that's not in your own dots? Do you have a store you like that's not in your own dots? Do you have a friend who's not in your own dots? Make one. A place of worship, something, but one choice. We each here, if we just each commit to doing one thing, but the population of Baltimore, by the time we get to 19 or 20 years, that's when my kids are out of school. We've transformed a whole city by each one of us just doing one thing. What will be the one thing you do? So that we can truly and in fact be one Baltimore. Thank you.